All right, as I said, today we're talking about the digestive system. We won't see every piece of it today. There'll be some parts we get to later as we dissect further into the pig. But today's a big one because you're going to open up the pigs for the first time. Okay? Once I get your pig for you, you can go back. I will hand you a scalpel. The scalpels, very, very particularly, not all classes get to use them, okay? If we have any problems with the scalpels, we won't get them back out. You just use scissors. You can do the whole dissection with scissors. It's just kind of fun and more interesting to use a scalpel because maybe you've never used one before. And it's exactly the same way a doctor would use or a surgeon would use to work on something like this. So it's kind of fun. Please, please, please be careful with them. They are extremely sharp, okay? Don't reach over and try and grab one out of your friend's hand and pull it away from them. I kid you not. One year I had a student do that, grab one out of another student's hand and try and yank it away. And as the scalpel went across his hand, he stood there with blood dripping down his arm, eyes wide open, looking at me like the most confused person imaginable. And he said, "But Mr. Hambling, I had a glove on." Come on, right? Like those little surgical gloves are not going to protect you against a scalpel, right? They're very, very sharp. So be very careful with them. Along with that, do not pry with the scalpel. They're not meant for prying. It's high carbon steel. It will snap right off, okay? If you do break a scalpel, let me know so we can get all the pieces collected, all right? I need to have a count of all the scalpels before we start, and I need to have them all back before we finish. We will not leave lab until I have every last scalpel that we had out, okay? So just please be very careful with them, okay? They're really not that dangerous as long as you're careful. So we're going to get into the dissection. As I said today, some of the parts will be a little bit gross because it's the first time we're opening it up. But after that, the whole thing just kind of gets easier. So let's get on with digestive. Actually, first, let's get on with how do you sex your pig? How do you know what sex it is? So, male versus female pigs. It is actually very, very easy. All you have to do is lift up the tail, okay? A male will only have one opening at the back here under the tail. That's called the anus. The female's got one too, but the female has an extra urogenital opening right there, okay? The male's urogenital opening, in other words, where his penis is way up here in the middle up here, okay, between some of the teats there. It is beneath the umbilical cord. I know you're going to look at the umbilical cord and think that that's his thing there, but it's not, okay? The umbilical cord's right there. Beneath that is a tiny little opening. These are baby pigs. You may see a scrotum on your pig. Some of them are large enough, but a lot of the time they're not big enough to have really developed that enough that you can see it. But you will be able to tell just one opening, two openings. If you miss that question on the test, I don't know how to help you. Okay, it's a very, very easy question. There'll be a pig with a tail taped up or pinned up, and it will say, "What sex is the pig?" Right? At least 4 or 5 people every year write "but." Okay, like read the question on the paper. It will probably say, "What sex is this pig?" We're not going to ask you to label the "but." All right, so it's a pretty easy question. Male versus female. So what are you going to do today? The very first part of the dissection is dissecting the neck region of the pig. This is to look at the salivary glands and also to get you used to how to use the scalpel and how to do the dissection. So you don't get to move on until I check you off on this and make sure you kind of figured out what you're doing. This is a difficult part of the pig to dissect. You're going to peel back the skin kind of like it looks here, and there's going to be a bunch of fatty tissue underneath of there. So it's kind of hard to see what you're looking at. It's good because you get a little experience of exploring and what it feels like to peel the skin back and kind of hold it with one hand and cut with the other hand to kind of get down in there. And you want to be gentle because you don't want to chop through the organs we want to look at, right? So what we're looking for here, once that section of the cheek is peeled off, and I realize more of the pig's peeled off here than what you need, this section of the cheek will peel off. If you're wondering where to cut, feel the jaw. You'll feel the jawbone. It's like right here in the picture. Just to the side of the jawbone, in that softer area, underneath and kind of beside the ear there, is where you're going in, okay? If you mess this part up, it doesn't matter. That's why I have you start here, because we're not going to put any of these parts on the test. They're hard to see and hard to find. Although last mod, everybody found them, which was pretty awesome. So what we're looking for is something called a parotid gland and a submandibular gland. The submandibular gland is kind of a more noticeable, kind of a ball-shaped sort of kidney bean looking thing down in here. And the parotid gland kind of wraps around it. It's a little bit softer. And then there's a little duct, and in your lab it calls it the Wharton's duct, or it's the parotid duct, that connects. It's a little harder to find that duct. But if you can get down into here and we can maybe see the glands a little bit, that's pretty awesome. These are the glands that produce saliva, so when you see a big juicy steak and you start salivating, that's your body getting ready to break that food down in your mouth. It's producing enzymes to break it down. Okay, that's salivary gland. Once you get that dissected and we check it off, we're like good to go, we're going to move on to the next part, okay? You can examine the mouth of your pig like your lab says a little bit. On another day, we're going to cut open the mouth, okay? Okay, so the next cut, and this one you have to be a bit careful with, we're going to cut into the abdominal region of the pig. We want to see all the major organs that are in there, so don't damage them. What you're going to do is you're going to find here in the picture on the left, you'll see the umbilical cord, the stump of it, sticking up there where they cut it off. What I like to do is grab the umbilical cord and lift up on it a little bit because it pulls the skin away from all the organs because it's hollow. Down in here, it's all hollow. Once you cut into that, a bunch of juices are going to come out. It's just the preservative. Don't freak out. Usually after you make your incision and make a hole, just kind of take your pig to the sink and kind of dump him out a little bit, okay, or her out a little bit. I know it's really gross. That's one of the grossest parts. So once you dump the liquid out, it's just preservative. That's all it is, okay? So you're going to cut a little slit there at the top above the cord, and then you're going to cut down along the sides. If you just kind of go to the outsides of the teats, you'll be in about a good location. So as you go down this way, and yes, males and females both have teats, okay? As you come down this way, don't connect it across the bottom on the posterior end because we want to keep the organs intact that are underneath this. And then this little flap of skin with the umbilical cord on the end is going to flip forward like this or down. And you see all the organs here? There's a bunch of stuff we're going to look at, and now you can see into the internals of the abdomen for the pig. You can see some intestines down there, can't you? A little bit of a liver. Okay. After you get that cut done, the next cut is going to be, clicker's not working here. Okay. The next cut is going to be up the abdomen. Now, in this picture, this person's cut up further than you need to cut. Okay, we will eventually cut up this far, but we want to cut up, being careful not to hit the organs, up to where you meet the rib cage. Once you feel the hard bone, don't try and cut that with your scalpel. You just dull or break your scalpel, okay? Okay. Once you get to here, you're then going to cut down the sides kind of by the arms, okay? In fact, you can also cut down by the back legs too, down the sides, because you want to flip the two sides of the skin and the muscle away from the abdominal region so we can open it up so you can really get in there and look at what's going on, okay? Notice the umbilical cord thing is that whole patch of skin is still on here. We haven't cut it off. It's going to stay there. Once we get that all opened up, you're going to start labeling your diagrams. And I'm going to come around and quiz you a bit to see if you know what you're looking at. Inside, one of the first things you're going to notice, and on your diagram and on your paper, it's near the very, very top, I think it's the top line, a very, very thin structure. It looks like skin, but it's actually your diaphragm. It's the pig's diaphragm. It's a muscle, and it's how you breathe. So just above that muscle is, you can see the heart up there. It's not in your diagram, and the lungs are also up in there in that chest cavity. So this thing actually separates the chest from the abdomen. There's a separation there, and it's this muscle. You will have to cut through it, so it's going to get kind of tattered and ragged, but it will probably be on the test. It's a thin muscle that helps you breathe. It is how you breathe. Underneath that, you can actually see the liver, which we'll label in this next picture here. So a lot of this is on the diagram that you've got right there. Some may be on the next page. Going down from the diaphragm, which is underneath, that's the heart up there by the anterior end, that's the head end. The diaphragm's here. Underneath of that is the liver, okay? It's the biggest organ in there. Inside the abdomen, it's the biggest organ, the liver. There's 3 lobes to it. If you flip the liver up, like in your second picture on your diagram on your paper, on the underside of your liver is this little green ball, and it's attached to the liver. It's called the gallbladder. Does anybody remember what the gallbladder produces? Starts with a B. Bile, yeah, bile. So the bile duct, which is also on your diagram, I don't know if I have one with it labeled, is the little duct that extends from that green thing down into the lower part of the stomach. Okay, that little duct right there. It's actually going to empty into what's called the duodenum or the duodenum, which is on your paper. You might be able to pick it out easier if you pick out the stomach first. The stomach is the big sac. This one's kind of deflated in here. Going out to the left of the picture, the pig's right, is the duodenum. It's just the extension of the stomach before it hits the small intestines. Okay. From the duodenum, it goes into the small intestines over here on the left, my left, pig's right. The large intestines are on the other side. Oftentimes they're going to look green. They may not. The difference is the large intestines, there's less of them, and they're larger diameter. The small intestines, there's a whole bunch of those, and they're smaller diameter. You have to really kind of dig to see which ones are which, because they can look really similar. A couple other features we need to point out here. The lungs are not on your diagram. That will be another day when we do respiratory. The pancreas is underneath the stomach. So you have to cut some membranes here, rip them away a little bit, lift up the stomach, and you'll see this sort of yellowish, kind of grainy, kind of brainy looking material. That's the pancreas. You can remember the stomach is lying on the pan. You're going to fry it. It's on the pancreas. Okay, remember that. It looks kind of like a little elongated organ underneath there. Yeah, that is on your picture, one of your pictures. Everybody good on those? Okay. Hard to tell? Well, we're going to point them out again when we get down to lab. All right, here's a better picture of a gallbladder. Your gallbladder might not be green. The blue color on this picture is from dye. These pigs were injected with dye. Our pigs are not this year injected with dye. Sometimes they are. Costs more money. That's probably why. It's kind of like this rubbery stuff they inject down the veins and arteries. So they dye the veins and arteries blue and red. So you can just tell them apart. They're not really that color. We just make them that color. So the bile duct is right there. This is the underside of the liver. And yeah, I know it's blue. The small intestines, the large intestines. See, they don't look that different in color in this picture, in this particular pig. Okay. The liver is still there. In this picture, you can see the small intestines. See how they're all over the place? The large intestine, when you look at a human's large intestine, it wraps up and over and around our small intestines. If you look it up online, you'll see it. It's a very different looking way that it's situated. In this picture, you can see the spleen. The spleen lies alongside of the pig's left side of the stomach. Okay, so the spleen, it looks like a long tongue-like splinter, the splintery spleen. It's like a tongue lying alongside the stomach. It's actually attached to it with some little membranes. You can't quite see the tip of it right there. And there's the liver up above. Okay, you should see that long splintery kind of pointy thing, organ, lying aside your stomach on your diagram. Now, when we look into the intestines a little more carefully, we're going to find a special part of the large intestines. It's called the cecum. Okay? The cecum is kind of like a cul-de-sac. It's basically an appendix for the pig. It's a dead-end little thumb of the large intestines that sticks off. Do you see how that little piece right there, large intestines are going and there's this kind of dead end? Well, they continue on further down, you can't see it, all the way down to the rectum. But the cecum is right here. You're going to try and find that on the pigs today. It will probably be on the test. It's a funny little thumb-like thing that sticks off. You know you got the large intestines if you found the cecum. Got it? Now there's one last thing on your picture that I don't think is on this label here, and that is the rectum. Okay? If you look at this big pile of large intestines, against the pig's back, like it's attached to the back of the pig, is the rectum. It's a tube that runs all the way down and out the back, which is the anus. Okay? So you're going to see in that diagram, there's a tube running along the back of the pig, underneath all those organs. That's the rectum, R-A-C-T-U-M. Okay? And the anus is at the end of that thing. All right? most of those. If you missed any, we're going to help you out when we're down in lab. First, though, let's make sure we've got the end correct. Which one is the male? Good, the one on the left. It even has testes there, so that's a little helpful. But it's only got one opening, okay? The female, which is on the right here, has 2 openings. It's really easy to tell. You just lift the tail up, okay?